What was it really like working with Peter Gabriel? We talked to one of his early drummers who played on a lot of the classic songs. Jerry Marotta is our special guest on Rock History Music. We featured part of this interview on another channel, but not on this channel as much a few years ago. So we're circling back. Jerry Marotta is an American drummer whose career has spanned into a lot of different genres, pop and rock and prog. He was born in 1956 and first gained recognition as the drummer on Orleans' Still the One. And after that, he became the key drummer for Peter Gabriel, playing on landmark albums like Melt, Security, and So, even though he shared drumming duties with Peter Gabriel's now current drummer, Manu Katché, on the latter. It was Jerry Marotta's innovative drumming, that tribal drumming technique, that really solidified his sound in the 80s. Jerry also worked with Hall & Oates, Kiss on My List, Private Eyes, that's him. He's collaborated with Paul McCartney, Tears for Fears, Sarah McLachlan, the Indigo Girls, and many others. Jerry has a reputation of being a deeply musical, inspired, innovative drummer. And he's still doing it today as a producer and a studio owner. And he remains one of my favorite drummers. Our interview with Jerry Marotta, talking about Peter Gabriel on Rock History Music.
But you were saying, when you listened to that first Peter, I had the same reaction. I remember going, there's a lot of different things. And I know you weren't there till the second, but your first reaction was, there's a cavalcade of sounds on this.
It just was not anything like the kind of music I liked or that I grew up. I grew up, I'm self-taught. Yeah. So I grew up playing the Motown records, Stax, Motown, R&B. That was it. That was what I was into. And I wasn't really much into rock of any kind. I was pretty snobby about the black thing, It was like if it wasn't black, it wasn't good, I mean, the Beatles were good. And, what I remember? Traffic, Steve Winwood, like Traffic started to, I started to pay attention to because there was like a funkiness to it, It wasn't like Genesis, that kind of based in, if you heard what I said about the more classical, more ethnic based, we grew up here in America, blues, jazz, R&B, that's our music. Now, rock music, yes, too, but the roots of our music is that, R&B, soul, and over there it's different. Yeah. But so I listened to the record. It was like June, and it was going to start in August to go to England, where I'd never been, tour. It paid well, and it was, it was an opportunity for me to broaden my vistas, and just, it was like a challenge to just do something different. And that's where it all began. And then we ended up, in that original band, he did like a promotional tour with most of the guys that were on the record. Alan Schwartzberg was the drummer, Steve Hunter, Phil Auberg, Tony Levin, Larry Fast, Robert Fripp, Jimmy Malin was the percussionist. So those guys were like, most of those guys were session guys in New York. They weren't going to go out on tour and leave New York to go play with Peter Gabriel. So, but I was not. That was not my focus. Was not to be a session musician.
Yeah.
So I like being in bands, like in a band situation. So it was perfect for me. And Tony Levin and Larry Fast stayed with Peter, and then it was me and Sid McGuinness was the guitar player, who went on to be in the David Letterman band for like 30 years. That was the initial, I believe that was the initial band. And then it sort of morphed, but generally it was always Tony, Larry, and I, until David Rhodes entered the picture, which was great. And Peter was always searching for guitar players, because like drums, he doesn't really like traditional drumming. He doesn't like traditional guitar playing.
Yeah.
So David Rhodes, you don't hear like guitar solos, and David plays brilliant, like little two-note thing, you know what I mean? Like small, little rhythmic, melodic. He's awesome. He's not trying to be Steve Lukather. He doesn't play like that. So but I did, it was very different to what I was used to. But ironically, Peter had a love for R&B, American R&B music.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is if you cut ahead 10 years, what was his biggest record? I mean, if you know Peter's music at all, are you familiar with all the records?
Yeah.
Okay. So then, Sledgehammer, Big Time, Steam, they're really, they're like an homage to American black R&B music.
Yeah.
That's what blew him up big. Not, the Security record, which was the record before So, I think is one of the best records, top 10 records of all time.
My favorite of his, yeah.
Not because I'm on it, but because it's just such a freaking brilliant record. The writing, Wallflower. Wallflower is, to me, I'm surprised that, honestly, I think like Celine Dion, Marotta, like somebody like that, like singing Wallflower. It's like an anthem.
Yeah.
I'm so surprised that it hasn't gotten, the attention of someone,
It's a make you cry kind of song. It's a make you cry kind of song. It's like it gets you right here.
Oh, it's like a Broadway, it's like a 11 o'clock, I think they call it on Broadway. Like
Phil said, when I asked Philip Alberg about working with Peter, and I'm a huge Genesis fan. I bought everything Peter did. He had mentioned, he says, well, I said, what was it like? He says, well, in one word, he says, Peter's a perfectionist, and that's just the way he is. He says, but I think anyone who loves his music would know that. What would you say? What was it like working with him?
With Peter?
Yeah.
Peter, in a lot of ways, Peter is like the director of a movie.
Mm.
That he may also be acting in. Because Peter, I honestly don't ever remember Peter coming into the studio with a song written. I don't ever remember that. And there's the famous story of when they were making So, after 9 months, Dan Lanois was producing that record, and Peter hadn't written any lyrics. And so one day, they were working in Peter's barn where we had worked. He rented this place for years. We stayed there and rehearsed there. They decided to do a Ray's record there. We did more than one record there. But Peter went into the studio and Dan nailed the door to the studio shut. You never heard this?
No.
This is a serious thing. Peter apparently freaked out. And Dan was like, you're not coming out until you write some fucking lyrics. I'm not letting you out. And he literally trapped him in the studio, which I don't know how Peter ended up getting out, what the outcome of that was. But the point is, Peter he has a process. So I don't ever remember him coming in with a written song. He had some ideas, some chords, and we would jam. Tony, Larry, Peter, me, and if there was a guitar player, yes, different. John Ellis, he was one of the guys that played with Peter guitar. David Rhodes, obviously, once he was in, that was it for guitar players. And we would just jam on stuff, and then Peter would kind of listen to it and sculpt it, and then we'd come back in and he'd be like, dude, let's do more of this, You hear this? Let's do that. Let's just play that. And that's the way he was. And a lot of times he might have had a vague idea, like there's a song, I can't remember which song it is, but the working title was Flat Moon. He just called it Flat Moon, but it didn't end up being Flat Moon. I don't know what it was, but yeah, Peter, he had all the right people. He liked me, Tony, Larry, David, and got us together, trusted us, loved us, and we toured together. We were together a lot, blah blah blah. We were like a band. We were like a band. We didn't get paid like a band, but we were like a band in every other way. So like for instance, the one thing I remember only because I really remember is Family Snapshot.
Yep.
Was this, the song Family Snapshot? We had been jamming on it, and I think John Giblin was that record. John Giblin was the bass player because Tony Levin was, I think, on tour with Paul Simon for like a year. So John did the record, and I think John toured with us. So, Steve Lillywhite was producing it. I think it was Steve. We're jamming on it, and we had the elements. And then I sat, and it wasn't quite there. And I went over to Peter at the piano, and I said, look, let's try this. Do this section here, then let's do this section, and then do this section, and then back to this section. And listen, like I basically arranged the song. The pieces were there. They just weren't flowing.
Yeah. But
in my mind, I heard it. I heard it. The way it is what I heard. And I didn't write anything. But I kind of put the song together in the way it ended up being and the way it worked. And Peter gave me a little bit of publishing for that. He was impressed and he was very happy, And so that was kind of the way we would do things. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Peter, but he didn't come in with, even when the thing that happened, Peter we were going to do the record that became So. And then after that, I was going to do an album with Paul McCartney. And like in England, I do like March, Peter, April, Paul, Peter, Paul. Again, the divine intervention.
Yeah.
Peter, Paul, but then at the last minute, Peter changed his schedule, and it was right at the same time as the McCartney record. And I couldn't really back out of it,
But you worked with McCartney, though. You ended up working with McCartney.
I did an album with him.
Yeah.
So the point is, I couldn't back out of the Paul record because, Hugh Padgham was producing it, and, it was Paul, Eric Stewart from 10cc, who wrote and sang and produced, and me, just the three of us. I mean, it was an honor for me to be like the third guy there, and just the three of us. And I couldn't back out of that. I didn't, there's just no way I was going to back out of that. So that's how Peter ended up bringing in other drummers, different people. And I would go there. I would go to Bath from Sussex, where we're working with Paul. A couple of hour drive to Bath where Peter was. And I would do whatever I could when I could. Like one time, the first time I got there, Stuart Copeland had just been there for like 2 days. And he was just leaving, and I was coming in. So it was like it got like that. But we did. The point of this is we did a version of Big Time. That was like Security. The next step was like I had goosebumps for like a day and a half. It was so deep. It certainly didn't end up being the one that was on the record, and The one that's on the record is, it's a pop hit. It's a hit song. The one that we did is more like the deep, heavy Gabriel. It was just awesome.
Is that out there someplace?
I don't know. I've heard people say that he put out some kind of box set of outtakes and this and that.
Yeah.
Stuff. I don't know. I have to maybe have a look at that and see. And maybe it's on there.
You were with Peter with the when you guys toured with David Bowie, right?
Yeah, we did. We only did one. No, we did 2 shows. You talking back then?
Well, I think I saw you in Edmonton at Commonwealth Stadium with the David Bowie and the Tubes.
We did. It was the
Tubes.
The Tubes.
Yeah.
Which I did. Later did a record with Fee Waybill, the lead singer from the Tubes. There was the Tubes, Bowie, and Peter Gabriel. Yeah, we played there, and I think we played in Vancouver in a they were domed stadium thing, arena.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we did any more than that. It wasn't. We didn't do a lot of that. We did 2 or 3 shows.
By the way, with the Gabriel thing, one of my best friends, he'll appreciate me telling you his name, John Scott. He was a good drummer in high school. I remember he was the guy who came up to me and says, "Man, you got to listen to this guy." No. Like one of those drummers. No. You got to listen to Jerry, man. Jerry's the guy, you know. And
that's funny.
I mean, I love when people say that about musicians, though.
What's that?
I love when people say that about musicians. When John Scott was telling me, "You got to pay attention to Jerry, man."
Yeah. Well, thank him for me. I appreciate that.
So,
I will tell you this. I think what the point of a lot of where I was going with this is, given what I said about and know about Peter's influences and background, for me coming in with the R&B thing, I think deep down, Peter's like a closet drummer, or was anyway back then. Yeah. But he liked that I didn't play anything like Phil or Bill Bruford, or you know what I mean, like the English proggy guy. You know what I mean? I came in and Robert Fripp, he named me Fat Ape on drums, and because I just pounded out, like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like not a lot of bish bash, frilly drumming, and I think that's what appealed to Peter. He was a huge influence on me in so many ways. My whole way I listen to music, the way I make music, the way I play when I work and produce. I'm doing quite a bit of production, and that he was a real influence on me on how to do that. Now, let me ask you a question, completely unrelated.
Yeah.
Are you Canadian? I'm
Canadian. I'm in Calgary. I'm a broadcaster in Vancouver, but we moved to Calgary because of autism funding. We had to come here.
You're in Denver?
No, I'm Calgary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Why did I think you were in Denver?
Well, we're right above.
No, it wasn't that. I think maybe it's somebody else who wants to do something. And but no, I could tell you're, first of all, I could tell by your, the inflections. You sounded Canadian, and you have a striking resemblance to Larry Gowan, who's a Canadian singer that I did 2 records with.
Well,
does anybody ever tell you that?
I have not. I get the Robert Downey Jr. thing. Oh, right here. Look at. Here we go. Hold on a second. Can you see that?
No. Oh, Gowan, 1985. Awesome.
Yeah.
What is that? Is that a quarter-inch tape?
Yeah, that's an old interview that.
Oh yeah.
He talks about you on that.
Well, he loves me.
He loves you. He loves you.
We were like we're so tight. Yeah. I mean, now he's in the
Sticks.
He's been doing that for 20 years. But we're like bonded. I just know his family. That record we did, the Strange Animal record, was Larry and I laid down the groundwork for that record. He thought I was the producer. He thought I was producing the record. And I really was in many ways. I was producing the record. We laid down the groundwork for that record, singing, grooving, limb drum, drums. I did my thing that I do, and early on it was just Larry and I. Ringo's house.
Ringo's house. I remember he had said in that interview. He says, and I mentioned it when you were doing your video, that Ringo came downstairs and Larry looks up at him. He says, "Well, I see you're getting at it. Well, I'll let you get at it." Then he goes back upstairs.
Yeah. I think Ringo would sometimes pop his head in because the studio was set up in a way like in the hallway at the end there was a door, and that door went right into Ringo's kitchen. So in the morning, if you stood back there by the door, you would have at some point hear him having breakfast with his kids and his wife. Like she had Barbara Bach, I think she had 2 children, not with him, but they were youngish, and you could hear that Ringo voice through the door, talking about stuff, and yelling at them, or I don't know, whatever he did.
Whatever fathers do, yeah.
But it was that was an awesome experience. But anyway, I don't know about Robert Downey Jr., but I don't know his face as well. But Larry, you got like it's funny, through the whole interview, I'm like, this guy looks like Larry Gowan.
What is it about Larry? Larry is, I remember the guy who did that interview, he gave me all his, actually I'll show you, he gave me all his interviews. That's why I have reel to reels. But anyway, you have to bake the tape because they're so old. But he said after the interview, he came up to me. He says, "Man, Larry's got a presence about him. There's something about that guy."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, well, it's hard to say. I know him in a different way. I know him in a very different way.
Of course you do, yeah.
He's just like he's like a hockey puck. He plays hockey, I don't know, he's just a guy. He's a regular guy. He's not, but he's talented. He's smart. He's lucky. Everything fell into place. That Strange Animal record, could have gone down, like the Titanic.
Yeah.
But and that's I don't even know if there's the time to tell it. If we talk again another time, that's an unbelievable story about how that record, how they broke that record. How they broke that record at and one thing about it was they postponed the release.
Right.
Here he is. He's got his record, and they're like, okay, well, we're not going to put it out. We're not going to put it out in March. We're going to wait till October.
Why?
Next gen. I think it's because CBS have a schedule of record. They have Michael Jackson, the Thriller's going to come out, and then
right.
Springsteen's got to. They have to. They can't. They have to spread them out. They have to spread them out, and so that's traditionally the way it works. The promotion. Like we need to promote. Pay attention to these particular records because they're the cash cow. They're how we were able to pay for the Gowan record. You're an unknown artist. But I will tell you just quickly.
Oh, yeah.
They had big marketing meeting, listening to the songs. They picked a song. They was going to make a video, and that was going to be the single. Well, the president of the label goes on the weekend to his country house with his family and the cassette or whatever of Strange Animal. He's playing it in his little home office. The song Criminal Mind is playing. His kids come running into the room and said, "What is that? What? Wow, that is awesome. Who is that? What is that?" Monday morning, he goes in, he calls everybody in, and he goes, "Scrap what we talked about. Forget what we said on Friday. This is the single, Criminal Mind." He said, "We're not gonna do the other whatever song it was. It's good. We're gonna put Criminal Mind out first because the kids. Can you imagine if the kids hadn't heard it or run in? Who knows what would have happened? But it's so bizarre.
Yeah.
The way things can happen, and in the music business, it's inspiring because the music business is totally screwed up in a big way. It's totally screwed up. I mean, the music industry kind of forced Peter to make a record like So with Big Time and Sledgehammer. They're not bad, but the real true Peter Gabriel fans, they didn't like it. Mm-hmm. I got a lot of people like, yeah, you know what SO stands for? Sold out.
I heard that, yeah.
Very disappointed.
Yeah.
But whatever. I mean, it did make him a global superstar.
It did. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Gowan, Criminal Minds.
Remember to subscribe to our channel, click the bell notification so you don't miss anything, because YouTube doesn't always let our 150,000 subscribers know when we have a new video. So click that bell notification, and really, if you want to help us out, share our videos on social media. Comment on them and like them. If you want to make a donation, there's a PayPal link at the very top of the description. I'm John Bowden. This is Rock History Music. Take good care of yourself.